It's another wonderful Wednesday with Don Anderson and the star of the show, Miss Sunny Danforth. Sunny's wave and say hi.
Hi, I don't know about the star of the show. I think it's our show on Wonderful Wednesday, Dawn. It's you and me, pal.
All
We're the
right, all right.
stars, and then
I'll
we
take
get to
50 credit.
call out some of the BS of the news, and kind of help
Yeah.
educate our
Oh yeah.
audience.
Yeah. They make our job easy. We really don't have to work to find anything,
Oh,
totally outrageous to talk about, right?
no, no, it actually, if you don't have to look far, because, yeah, in fact, as I was looking at some of the articles, I thought, life is getting stranger than fiction.
Hmm.
Things have gotten
Yeah.
so crazy, and I expected to get even more so, but that's what my thought was. Life
Yeah.
is really getting
We,
stranger than fiction.
we've truly reached a point where I almost never say I'm shocked anymore. It doesn't mean anything anymore. Because every time you hear one outrageous, there's something that's more outrageous than the last outrage. The degree of moral depravity of our opponents is beyond reason. And of course, we'll touch on some of that in just a moment. But I thought I'd lead off first with this whole issue of climate change, because we know that's one of the weapons that the radical left uses to beat us over the head with, around how
Yeah.
mankind is the most dangerous thing that's ever happened in the history of the planet. And therefore, the things that we've done in the last 30 years are going to cause the planet to, I guess it's so fragile, it's going to disappear and like fall apart unless you start walking and driving an electric car. But I thought this is pretty interesting heading into the campaign season. There was a survey that was recently done that showed, it got picked this up from the Daily Caller, that this climate change issue was seen by the general voter as being very not very worth very much in their eyes. So only 3% of respondents to the survey pointed out climate change as being very important at all. Like 60%, I think it was like 57% total, pointed to inflation, economics, and immigration as being the most important issues. So no matter how they flay that climate change as an issue for the average American, it's just not. And then part of that survey, they said something like, how much money would you be willing to spend to have an impact on climate change? I think I see the numbers here. The median answer was $10. Um, and 17% of Democrats surveyed said they wouldn't want to pay anything. And that's Democrats. So they got a long ways to go if they're going to sell people on the destruction of the economy based on the environment.
If people, and to your point, if people really thought this was so important, they would really be, they wouldn't have to force us to, try to limit the water in our toilets and our washing machines, or force us out of natural gas for our appliances. This is a forced thing that is actually costing America so much money, and it's enriching other nations what they're doing. And I'm glad to hear that. And also the important things, the economy and our safety, and what those are things that hit us much more, right?
Mhm.
It's so many things are affected our pocketbook, Don. Look at the price of what's going on right now. I
Sure.
it's crazy,
Yeah.
the
Well,
inflation.
if you truly had concrete evidence that man-made activities was causing a change in climate, then people would buy into that, and we would see
Right.
evidence of it. But they don't have any. They're trying to convince us of this gigantic lie. And if you go on the internet, and I did just out of curiosity to see what I could find, almost everything you see, which shows you the dominance the left has with the national media, everything makes the assumption that the climate is headed for like hell in a handbasket if it's not fixed in the next 20 years. Like we're gonna all die off. Number one, and number two, that man is the cause of it, and neither one of those has been proven. It's just incredible. But if you say the lie long enough and often enough, you can get enough people to believe it. Clearly, that's the strategy with these people.
Well, it is. And I'll tell you this morning, because we've got winter weather storm coming in, right? A
Mhm.
storm is coming in. We're going to get an Arctic blast. And my brother is going to be flying in tomorrow morning. And so I have to go pick him up. So I'm looking at the weather. And this morning I looked to the weather channel to see. And I'll tell you, the guy on there said, last year was the hottest day of was the hottest year on record for like 100,000 years. And I like
Right.
said, BS to my TV. You know, 100,000 years. Are you kidding me? They used to grow grapes in England, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. They're making these assumptions as if we had data tracking back more than in terms of actual
Exactly.
temperature. I don't think we can possibly go past say 200 years at most.
No,
And if the
no.
planet is allegedly millions of years old, we don't have even a sliver of data to support this sort of thing. So
I couldn't even believe that that came out of his mouth. But there, unfortunately, there are people that are going to eat that hook, line, and sinker, you know,
sure.
and believe it. And no, just because and he shows a graphic of
Mhm.
the smoke that was in New York City from the fires in Canada. Lord knows we have enough fires going on here in Washington and
Mhm.
Oregon. You know, they don't manage anything anymore in the forest. They just want to burn it up.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
no, that's not
Okay.
climate. You know, they're not going to control it. Yes, the climate does change, but you know, it's not. We have El Nino and La Nina, and then a neutral season, and then we have
And at the end
harvest.
of the day, yeah, if they were really serious about reducing our carbon footprint, if you will,
Mhm.
meaning the footprint of man, you'd be going to the countries that is doing the most damage, and that'd be Russia and China and India. They do absolutely nothing. I mean, the pollution from those places, the pollution from China is so bad that there's smog in LA is being caused by the pollution that floats over the ocean from China. And then you look at the improvements that have made here in terms of the environment. I mean, you know what LA used to be like in the 70s
Yeah.
and 80s. You couldn't see the hills, and it's cleaned up amazingly. I mean, the Great Lakes. What was it? Was it Lake Erie? One of those lakes that actually caught on fire. The one near Cleveland. Those things are far cleaner than they used to be. The Willamette River used to be like an armpit when I was a kid. All of these places are cleaned up. So the United States has done a phenomenal job in terms of decreasing emissions. And you remember when buses would drive down the street and just belch out that black stuff? The worst thing in the world was a city bus back then. We don't see any of that anymore.
No, we don't. And you're exactly right. If it was critical that we, you know, have to protect the planet, and first of all, we need carbon. You know, it's the building block of life. But
Mhm,
we have huge polluters. Our coal is going to China. They are building
mhm,
lots of more coal plants to burn our coal. That's some of the
mhm,
cleanest coal. That's what I've read. Some of the cleanest
mhm,
coal in the world. And
mhm.
it's so I don't know about that
Yeah,
stuff, but that's what I've read. I don't know. But you know,
sure.
something,
Plus,
go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say, just as a quick ending to all of this, and the solution that the left proposes all the time is electric cars, where they have to mine this stuff in these really poor African countries, where they basically use slave labor to get them, and then disposing of that stuff is it lithium?
Yes,
Is like hugely detrimental to the environment.
it is.
So their solutions aren't helpful either. So it's just there's just no credibility in their argument.
No, there isn't. But, and I'm glad to hear it because I just posted a link to a story that is from KGW, and it is says that 8 years, 8 years later, Oregon Climate Kids case moves toward the federal trial. This is a case that was originally filed by 21 young Oregonians in 2015 that alleges the government has failed to establish a constitutional right to a stable climate. A constitutional right to a stable climate? I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't think
Okay.
so. And
Well,
there's nothing there.
I,
You cannot buy your way out of trying to control the weather or the climate of the
well, I've
world.
read the Constitution cover to cover several times. I don't recall seeing anything in there about a, a climate provision. But then again, I didn't see an abortion provision either. So,
No, no, we didn't. And so here you have what I'm going to say is a one of those frivolous type lawsuits, right? But here we are 8 years later. It's going to be going to trial. And so, with what your story that you were talking about is actually good news because, we have a
Mhm.
lot more data and from 8 years ago about the hoax of what it is. The truth is coming out about the climate hoax. There are a lot of people that are real smart in our climate that have written about it
Mhm.
and that are have brought the truth out about this. But something interesting in this, when the case was first filed, we had, I think it was Obama was in office. Let's see. No, let's see. A lot has changed. It was first filed. Barack Obama was president and John Kitzhaber was the governor. And in
Mhm.
2015, climate change was still seen as a dire problem by many, and yet to
Mhm.
become the mainstream issue it is today. So, and it's a federal case, and it's so now there's been lots gone on. There's tried to dismiss the case and whatnot.
Mhm.
And now it says nope, it's going to be moving forward, and
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. And of course, we'll just have to wait and see what happens on this. But the climate thing
Well,
is
knock
just,
on wood.
it's a hoax.
Yeah, well, knock on wood. Yeah, at least at the federal level, the Supreme Court is made up of constitutionalists by and large. There's a couple of people that are really lost in space there, but the vast majority of them are constitutionalists, and so at least there, anything could happen. But having said that, it's a pretty safe bet. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, hey, I've got a story I think it's really important for us to talk about. Um, and this is from the Willamette Week. This is in regards to Jamie McLeod Skinner. Apparently, three staffers have alleged that Jamie McLeod Skinner's driver feared physical violence from her. And the new allegations mark the first public claim that the congressional candidate laid a hand on an employee. So, three former campaign workers have come forward and alleged that during her last run for office, she's run at least three times that I know of for office. She's
Mhm.
desperate, and the left is desperate to get her elected. The
Mhm.
candidate twice made physical contact with her campaign driver, so much so that the driver had said, "I'm scared she's going to hit me." And you know
Wow.
what? Nobody should be in fear of that. And a person that
Mhm.
has this type of thing, I'm going to
Mhm.
say allegedly, uh, shouldn't hold any kind of public office.
Sure. Well, it doesn't sound like the person has the right temperament to hold public office. Is that if that's indeed the case? Um, yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah. So, share this around because I think people need to know. And in fact, I remember when I was trying to think of what position she was running for. It might have been CD2. I'm not sure, but she said she tied herself to a family ranch, and the
Mhm.
family ranch said, "You know what? She's like persona non grata around here. So no, she's
Yeah.
not a part of. She might share a name, but she's not a part of the family." It's a story similar to that. So she is somebody who is not necessarily what I would say, from what I've read, a of upstanding character that you want representing you, especially being
Yeah.
on the left.
Oh, yeah. And these are the kinds of things where you look at it and one thing, maybe it's a one off. Two things, yeah, we better look for it. But by the third or fourth,
Yeah.
you see a pattern, and it's got to have an impact in terms of how you evaluate that person, right?
Yeah, and apparently the Willamette Week actually looked at the text messages, um, and and said, that we're running this story. because they
Mhm.
saw the evidence of this. And the staffer said, the driver said, she punched me a few times while I was driving, and it
Mhm.
wasn't in malice, just to like alert me to a
Mhm.
car or something, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like that. And
Mhm.
so that's
Yeah.
all I think we need to say about that. But it's, check out the
Sure.
story, and when
Yeah, well,
you're
I'm a
looking at
weakness.
the
Yeah.
text messages, and she brought the
Mhm.
receipts, I'll say that, or the
Mhm.
driver. I don't know
Well,
if it's a woman, or I have no
well,
idea.
well, Emmet isn't exactly the most conservative, outfit either. So
No.
for them to be saying that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
Yeah.
what else have you got, Dawn?
Well, I thought it'd be worth our time to speak a little bit about this issue of the Secretary of Defense kind of disappearing. Have you
Yeah.
heard about that one?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's worrying on several levels. I mean, the first thing I'll caveat all of this by saying this: if I thought the president was really the president and in charge, I'd be more concerned about it. But I don't think the guy's there anyway. So to whomever the Secretary of Defense is supposed to be reporting to, this is a worrying thing. I mean, essentially, for those of you who may not have heard the story, he disappears for like a couple of weeks, roughly, without telling anybody where he is. And it turns out he's in the hospital having like prostate surgery, I think it was, some kind of a like turbo cancer that's arisen out of nowhere. So when these kinds of things happen, typically the Department of Defense doesn't get. There's not many organizations more important to the country than the Department of Defense. You have a chain of
Right.
command. You report. You assign your duties to someone else, usually your assistant, while you go off to have your surgery or while you're incapacitated. It appears that none of this happened, which speaks to at a minimum gross negligence on the part of the entire administration. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff. Um, if you were running a small office, you would have good enough sense to do that at a minimum. And he goes off,
Yeah.
nobody knows where he is.
No, nobody knew where he was. And this is the thing is, this is national security issue. And because in order for, let's say we were attacked, Biden has some codes, right? God forbid.
Heaven help.
Okay. He has some codes, and he's going to pick has a little menu of how he's going to respond, right, to an invasion, to an attack on America. It is this person's job to confirm the identity of the president. They have to share codes. The defense secretary, that's his job. So here he is, incapacitated. Nobody knows where the hell he is. And the president doesn't know he doesn't know where he is. The staff didn't know. And
Well, the president
you know
doesn't even
what?
know where
We
he
the
himself
people
is.
we don't need to know what his health issue is. But hello?
Yeah, I mean, the more things come out, the scarier it gets. I mean, the ship is flying without a pilot. I mean, that's pretty much where we are. Well, or the pilots, people that we don't know and we probably ought to be afraid of, but that's a whole other thing, right?
You
So,
know, and I think this is a big deal because this is how little they even respect the office. He personally, he respects the office he holds and the responsibility to the American people.
mhm,
That was thoughts that have crossed my mind, going, wow, you just think that you don't have to tell anybody. What
yeah,
I'm doing is what I'm doing, and I don't have to tell anybody because we know, I believe, I personally don't believe that Joe Biden is running our country.
no, I'm quite sure he's
Okay.
not.
He's the mouthpiece that can't find his way off the stage.
Yeah,
That is, in name only,
yeah,
but I personally don't believe we've got a shadow government. Did they know? It doesn't sound like it. Even if they did, they didn't tell the staff of Biden. And now, and I posted there a link to from PJ Media, the White House is trying to cover up the scandal with his absence.
yeah,
That's about his absence.
mhm, yeah. It's not something you can cover up, and I understand that they're trying to impeach the Secretary of Defense now. I think his last name's Austin.
Yeah.
And it's not just for this, but for the disaster that happened in Afghanistan. I mean, it's not been a
There's a
very,
list.
yeah. Yeah,
This
there's
is
a
the
laundry
topper.
list of disasters over the last, like, 2.5, 3 years. So at least there's good news that that's happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I feel for him and his health issues, but he absolutely dropped the ball for the American people. He was
Right.
not looking out in the best interest of the American people,
Mm.
not for
Yeah.
you or me or anybody else.
And if
And
it was an emergency situation, then those
yeah,
mechanisms should have kicked in pretty automatically in terms of what happens next. I mean, let's suppose he had gotten assassinated or dropped dead or something like that, right? You remember when
right.
Reagan got shot? Things are built in that automatically need to happen. And if those things didn't happen to the degree that the president doesn't even know, uh,
Yeah.
it's kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, this is a gross incompetence, at the White House, and this man does not respect the position that he holds. Period.
Right. Nope. 100% agreed.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a great, and it's kind of a great segue because it is DC we're talking about here. I thought I at least had to mention another article I came across about DC, and that's the out of control crime rate. I mean, these statistics are absolutely eye popping. I'll just read a couple of them to you, right?
Okay.
So Washington DC, let's see, had almost 1,000 carjackings in the city in 2023 alone. I mean, it's just you can hardly believe it. Six times more. The 2023 number was six times more than 2019. So you had 152 in 2019, which isn't a small amount, to like 959 carjackings. Um, and if the numbers don't mean anything to you because they're so big, they don't really mean anything, then you bring it down to a personal level. It's becoming like so commonplace, for example, that the Secret Service that was guarding President Biden's granddaughter had to fend off carjackers at gunpoint. Had to shoot at them to get them to run away. That's how pervasive it is. I mean, that the Secret Service is having to run off carjackers. It's incredible. There's a congressman there. Let's see, Representative Henry Cuellar from Texas. This is a Democrat. He was victim of carjacking at gunpoint just outside his apartment in the at the Navy Yard, right? One of the like highest end, hottest neighborhoods in DC. And here's a
Wow.
three armed assailants approached him and stole his car. Now the good news here is at least there's poetic justice. Your party voted to disarm the police. So this is the result. I'm glad he didn't get hurt, but this is the result. And we know we talked about several cases on this show where this has happened to congressmen,
Yeah.
lawyers, people who vote for this stuff are now feeling the impact of it. So as bad as it seems, the good news here in this is at least the people who put this stuff in place are feeling the result of their own policies for once.
Well, they are, and in fact, I had the opportunity to watch Trump's one of his rallies, and in Ohio or Iowa, and he talked about DC and the rampant crime, and he says it's almost like unrecognizable, the graffiti that's on the beautiful marble and the
Mhm.
crime and whatnot. And so he says, when I get back in office, we're going to take this over. We're
Mhm.
going to federalize, I think he said, federalize DC, and we're gonna take it over. And I'll tell you, it's DC is not a state, and there's a reason for that.
That's why.
And
That's exactly why.
and so he says we're going to clean it up, and I'll tell you, he's the guy to do it. He's the guy to
Mhm.
do it because the DC is, like you just said, the result of what they've been voting for. You want the Democrat way, there you go.
Mhm.
It's not even safe there. And so I'm going to post a story that is sticking with DC, and but it's not in the same flavor, and that has to do with Merrick Garland. He says the Department of Justice will speed up the hunt for non-violent January 6 protesters. Do you think that's what he should be doing? Hell no.
Uh,
You know?
it's unbelievable. This same guy. So these are people that basically did nothing except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And
Yeah.
anybody who's seen video of it can see that. In the meantime, the people were trying to tear down the federal building in Portland. The people who did the thing in Seattle, where they locked down a number of blocks in Seattle, we know
Yeah.
how violent that was. Uh, the people who basically burned Minneapolis to the ground. Um, all of these things, and they've gotten nothing but a slap on the wrist. Um, and we've got people who were in DC who merely were just standing around, who actually got jail time. Some of them are still in jail. So clearly, the legal system's been weaponized against people who think differently. That's what we have here. Uh,
You, and you're right. It has been weaponized against us, the citizens. And, on January 5th, Garland had a press conference. And in that clip, which is in this link, he said the Justice Department will hold all January 6 perpetrators at any level accountable under the law, whether they were present that day or were otherwise criminally responsible for the result or the assault on our democracy. What the hell does that mean? Let's see. I was thinking about it. I was tweeting about to somebody who was there.
well, if you
Oh,
think
you're going to go get arrested, then I'll get arrested?
you think that sounds vague, it's vague on purpose. The
You're
minute,
damn right it is.
so that way we can basically throw you in prison or make your life miserable for anything we want.
And it's the fear factor. They
Mhm.
want us afraid.
Afraid to speak.
So I'll tell you, I say BS to that. And
Mhm.
it's astonishing, astonishing what's going on in our country. And we have to rely on very good lawyers to fight this system, this overreach by the Department of Justice and by Merrick Garland. I was thinking today, and they're attacking and prosecuting the conservative lawyers, those
Mhm.
that have ever represented Trump or others,
Mhm.
election integrity stuff. And it is just, it's just atrocious what we are seeing, the lawfare, and it is to silence us and it is to make us afraid. And we
Yeah.
have the right to take our government back. It's in the
But it won't.
Constitution.
But it won't be taken back without courage, and it won't be
No.
taken back without speaking up, and it won't be taken back without some people taking hits. I'm sure that when you all first started this show, you probably worried personally about what might happen to you. I know I did when I first started doing talks like this. I actually thought
Yeah.
about it. Do I really want to do this? And it's like, well, do you wait till they have guns outside your door, or do you do it now? And I think the earlier we do this, the more often we do this, the more we reduce the likelihood that we're going to have to exercise that Second Amendment. Um,
And I agree with you. And so, yes, I, pay attention because I know that we're on here and speaking truth. And there are those in our government that don't agree with us. And because I don't agree with what they're doing, this January 6th, let me tell you, I know I saw somebody made a post and they said, let's see, January 6th, the so-called insurrection. Do insurrectionists walk right between the velvet ropes? You know, do the police move the gates to invite the insurrectionists in? No.
yeah,
And you know
it,
what? You don't have an insurrectionist with some flagpoles. You come
it,
armed to the hilt.
it defies imagination
Logic.
that there are people
Yes.
that would logic defies logic that people would actually buy into this. But we have to remember that the loudest and most vocal 25%, 30% of the population is also the percent of the population is just not capable of thinking. So if you get discouraged by those friends and relatives or people you see in the media around you who buy into this stuff, don't let that discourage you, because there's another 70% of the people out there that either 100% don't buy into it or are scratching their heads at least and thinking, this doesn't smell the sniff test. And those are the ones you have to go forward and win. And you win by talking. I mean, when I think about, just from my history classes and what I read as a kid, when you think about an insurrection, a revolution, you think about what happened during the Russian Revolution, people getting gunned down in the street and ridden down by horses. The French Revolution, right? Burning people at the stake and shooting them, right? The Romanian Revolution with Nicolae Ceausescu, right? Those were real insurrections, revolutions. That there, I mean, that's about as unrevolutionary behavior as you could possibly imagine. And they had every opportunity. It's the capital of the United States. If they didn't want people to go there, that could have easily been sealed off. They wanted people to go there so they could basically make this fake story. It's so obvious.
Yes, it is obvious, and it's becoming more and more obvious to people that didn't realize that it was a false flag issue that had taken place. And it's very even more obvious
Mhm,
to people when you realize Ray Epps,
mhm,
who just got sentenced yesterday, and he gets probation for a year, a $500 fine, and $100 or 100 hours of community service. And
mhm,
he is on several videos saying, "We've got to go storm the Capitol. We've got to
mhm.
go inside." He
Yeah.
was, and he's with the FBI, and he
Mhm,
was one of the main instigators of getting
mhm.
people to go in there. So
Oh,
it's
well, I'll tell
just a
you.
bold-faced lie that there was an insurrection, and
Yeah, I'll tell
you
you a
know,
quick story that makes me. This is a personal story. It makes me know this stuff is a lie. I was on a family vacation. Must have been 2005 or six, and it was I want to say the president of someplace like some Middle Eastern country. I want to say Qatar or Afghanistan or Iraq came to visit, and I was there with my family, and we're maybe like 4 blocks from the White House, and everything was looking calm and normal, and all of a sudden, people appeared out of nowhere. I'm talking people in suits. They were very polite, and they were excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir, we're gonna have to, we got some dignitaries coming through. We're going to move you over here, right? I mean, they appeared out of nowhere, right? I don't
right.
know if they popped out of the ground, right? But the level of security there, if they want that place to be secure, trust me, it's secure. So the bottom line is they chose for it not to be. Um,
They did, and I watched. It was Greg Kelly had a really good show last night, and he showed a timeline of what was exactly taking place right before the people entered the Capitol. They were about to do the discovery or the challenges to the election. They were going to be showing the evidence that they had.
mm,
And Greg Kelly on Newsmax last night's show, look it up.
mhm,
And it was, he did a timeline and he was showing you what was going on, what was outside. The people were just outside,
mhm,
nothing. And what was going on inside. I will tell you that that type of programming
mhm,
tells you the truth of truly what was going on. And then you see the videos of Ray Epps and those others
mhm.
that were instigating the crowd. I've heard at least 200 um, informants,
Mhm.
FBI, whoever they are, were in all the crowd.
And the thing is, again, I didn't follow this
And
that.
it was to disrupt that.
Mhm.
And then after everything, they had no appetite to come back in and challenge that election because
Oh,
that
yeah.
election was false.
Mhm.
And that's what the whole thing is about, is because the election was a sham and stolen.
And how much fanfare did they give that poor woman that got killed? I think she was an ex Air Force officer, or whatever. They just shot her dead.
Yeah,
Um,
Ashley Babbitt.
yeah, you would have thought, given all the play they gave to these basic criminals in Minneapolis, for example, you know, who who died, and we want to go into the little details associated with that. This woman got like no coverage from the national media in terms of how she was treated. I don't. Let's say, and let's say for the sake of the conversation, she really was breaking the law, and she really was a cut up, and she really was acting up. They shot her dead. Was she armed? I don't think she was.
No, no, she
She
was not armed.
she did not point a weapon to anybody. What are they doing shooting her? I mean, just this is just without knowing anything else about it. That's just criminal.
So I'll tell you, Greg Kelly goes into that as well. You have three officers. Three of the officers move out of the way. The guy who shot, and it was one of the agitators that broke the window, they just ushered up Ashley to go through. And he is now known, it is now known that the fellow who shot her never said anything, did not identify himself, did not say stop, didn't do anything. And, she was murdered.
If what I saw,
She
she
was
wasn't even
murdered and
she
she
wasn't
was
even
set
a
up
threat.
to be.
Yeah, she wasn't threatening anyone.
No.
She wasn't coming at anybody with a weapon. She wasn't, even like a billy club, nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, not to mention she's a woman. It's just incredible to me.
Well, she was militarily trained, so that would be a big difference of me doing that versus
Mhm,
her doing that, okay? Because she has some military experience and I'm
mhm,
sure hand-to-hand combat training and
mhm.
things like that. But you know what? She was there to see President Trump and to experience this, and also, I will say, protesting the illegitimate election for the illegitimate administration that we have right now.
Mhm. Well, we're going to use their rules of engagement. Why weren't they tackling her and handcuffing her? I mean, I think all that's
Right,
wrong too.
right.
But she's
Well,
supposed to get
why did
chastised.
those three police, Capitol Police, move out of the way? They were standing in front of all the people with the
Mhm,
glass behind them
mhm.
because
Yeah,
it was,
it's well, we all know the answers here.
we do,
It is
we
what it is.
do. And
Right.
it's damn sad. I mean, what's going on in our nation on so many levels is
Mhm.
damn sad. And here
Well,
you have Merrick Garland going, well, we're going to go after everybody.
yeah. Well,
You
yeah.
know what?
It's the citizens versus the United States. That's
It
let's
is.
face it. That's where we are. But I'd be remiss though, just switching real gears because I want to make sure we cover this thing.
You
This is
bet.
the Boeing and the door flying off the airplane thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you heard about that, and it
Yes,
landed in somebody's backyard. I think in Tiger. Did you hear that?
it did land in somebody's backyard. Yes.
It's just
And
unbelievable.
apparently they even found two cell phones, you
Wow.
know, two. I don't
And the
know.
cell phones survived, from what I understand. They were still working.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So
How
this
scary.
well, this begs the other issue, though. I found an article earlier today, and it showed that so Boeing's SEC filings, so corporations have to file with the SEC for a lot of things. In this case, what their bonus structure was for their executives and their CEO. Well, they've modified their bonus structure such that you're usually going to get paid for things like profitability and cost savings and safety. We're talking airlines, so safety is really important, right?
Yeah.
Well, they added to the list DEI. So if you add something to the list, you got to reduce the impact the value you're going to place on other things. Now, I'm not here to say there's a direct correlation between uh, DEI and doors flying off airplanes, but I think that one should at least begin to scratch one's head. We know that there's been a huge increase in the number of near misses, for example,
Oh,
that have been
yeah.
occurring
And even collisions.
in collisions, air traffic controllers that are having to pass really, really low weak tests. Um,
Yeah.
if we're going to diminish the bar that air traffic controllers have to cross, in order to meet this DEI thing, uh, pilots are going to have to cross in order to meet the DEI requirement. Uh, uh, Mechanics and what they have to do to meet the DEI requirement. At some point, that's not going to end well. And we've been very fortunate so far, but you can't keep doing this and expect there's not going to be an adverse consequence. I mean, me for one, I'll tell you now, for the first time in my life, I've never liked to fly, and I traveled a lot for work, and I love the fact that I didn't like to fly because of the headache factor, not because of safety. The safety is amazing. I mean, I was in the Air Force. I was around a lot of people who became commercial plane pilots after flying military. So those guys know what to do. I'm, for the first time, scared to fly because of DEI. I'll be blunt.
Well, I'll tell you, and that's what Marjorie just said. She says, now I'm afraid to fly. And so, the thing is it's because of DEI, because of, I worry more. Well, there's several things I worry about regarding flying. So I can say I'm afraid to fly too. Have I stopped flying? No. But I definitely am afraid to fly. Something that's scary about this. So Lori says, let's talk fleet age. This plane is only a year old. So it's not the age. This whole fleet, it's not the age. Okay. But what is scary is this particular plane had 3 times pressure sensors alerts, 3 times. And they had, because it had that particular plane, it was not allowed to fly to Hawaii in case it had a pressure issue. It had to, I read this, it had to stay over land so it could turn around and easily land. And
Now,
yet
see,
here you have.
that that by itself, that by itself means you shouldn't fly it at all. To my mind,
Right?
I mean,
So
if you,
clearly they're trying to figure out, how come this sensor, are they going, well, we've checked everything and maybe it's just a false alarm. I don't know, but the plane's only a year old. And this is a huge issue. And it's even a bigger issue because I think they have found 5 airplanes. Don't quote me on this, but I think through their inspections, they have found 5 airplanes that have had issues with loose bolts and or missing bolts. And I have, well, anyway, one of my cousins used to work for Boeing, and actually you could call her Rosie the Riveter because that's exactly what she did. She said the men were afraid of heights, and she was a riveter and for Boeing for years and what. So yeah, in fact, the same flight I have been on, that maybe, I don't know about that plane, but it went from Portland to Ontario, and that's exactly how I went the last 2 times I had to go down to Southern California. As I landed at Ontario Airport, and I'm going, was I on that plane? In fact, I remember thinking, gosh, this is one of the newer planes. How nice.
Yeah.
They don't make it like it used to.
Well, it's air travel is super safe if the rules are followed. It's a super checklist driven industry. And when you start like missing checklists and skirting rules, it's only a matter of time before disaster happens. And when you do things like lower standards because you're trying to meet some DEI requirement, it's only a matter of time. And this is the thing to remember. There's multiple moving parts here, no pun intended, because you got contractors, you got subcontractors, you've got the air traffic controllers, people who train them. You got the pilots themselves and how they're trained. You got so many moving parts. And in any one of those, you start having quality control issues. That's not going to be a good thing. Now, DEI, obviously, this stuff will adversely impact all of us, no matter what industry you're in. But not many of them can give you a catastrophic result. I mean, it's one thing if if your CPA blows it and you wind up paying an extra $5,000 in taxes or something, but if they blow it on your airplane, the results could be a little more permanent. Um,
Or on the pilot, the
sure,
plane, the pilot, the air traffic controller.
yeah,
Absolutely, that's catastrophic.
yeah. And then you start thinking about things like there's lots of other industries too. There's trucking, for example. There's the car you drive. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Speaking of cars you drive, I had to rent a car not too long ago. And when I went to put the cruise control on, it said radar's ready. And I thought, what the hell does that mean? Radar's ready.
Radar is ready.
Yes. And so I hit the cruise control and I'm doing about 70 miles an hour on the freeway. And yes, that was the speed limit.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I could feel the steering wheel turn automatically. I go, oh no, you're not doing that. I turned that puppy off, man. I said, no, now I know what radar ready meant. One of these self-driving thing in the car. I went, heck no, that's not for me. Not
Yeah.
for me. I'm sorry.
And, you know, it's funny when they first started talking about this whole self-driving car thing. My first fear was I didn't want to turn over the car driving to some computer programmers, and I still would be really worried about that too, right? But my bigger fear actually is that puts them in a position to just turn your car off, which is what they really want to be in a position to do, to just basically control your entire life, control your movement. Um,
Yeah.
Stalin would have been dreaming of a system like this.
Oh
He
boy,
could have
right?
hey, it's more efficient. Then he wouldn't have had to spend so much money on bullets.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of bullets, we've got two good news things here. And one, if you hadn't heard, yesterday, it was Harney County Circuit Court Judge Robert Ratio signed the general judgment. He did it on Monday, and the judgment finalizes the opinion that Ratio issued in November, finding the law violated the right to bear arms under the Oregon Constitution.
All right.
So what it did is he finalized his order, striking down the voter approved gun control law. Hooray! That is a win for Oregon. Of course, Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, here's another reason we have to get her out of office, right? And we've got to get, oh, dang, I can see Will Lathrop elected as Attorney General in Oregon. She's going to appeal the ruling, of course. That goes without saying in Oregon. But that was fabulous news. And another really good news is for Ohio. The Ohio legislators had passed a bill that prohibited gender affirming care for kids. The governor vetoed the bill. But today, the Ohio House overrides the governor's DeWine's veto of the bill prohibiting gender affirming care for kids. So the Republican legislators, and you know, the shame of it is, I believe DeWine is a Republican.
Well,
I think he is a Republican governor. And
we know all Republicans ain't Republicans.
no, they're not. Just because they have an R doesn't mean that's really what we want.
Right.
And so I'm very happy that the Ohio House overrode that veto. I'm glad they had the votes to do it, and they're looking out for the kids. It's great.
And the
Great
great
for
news
Ohio.
is
We
that
need more of it.
Yeah, and that governor has been outed for for what he's done. So the next time they have a governor's race, whoever's running against him, that should be platform item number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to post those two stories here. We have to have good news, and believe me, there's a lot of good news. Like you heard tonight, the whole climate thing is not necessarily as popular as those would. I think it's just a minority of people that are buying into that. Unfortunately, our school children are getting indoctrinated to this thinking and are actually getting fearful of our climate. Imagine that, a child being fearful of their climate. All they need to worry about is kid stuff, just go have fun and be a kid.
Sure. And I tell you, they're destroying childhood. They're making them afraid all the time. You don't know what gender you are. That's another thing they're doing to them. Suicide rate is higher than it's ever been amongst young people. They're destroying their families with their crazy policies, increasing crime in their neighborhoods. It's an attack on the family. And one of the reasons why I think, in the short term, there's a lot of things we need to fix and we need to do immediately, like immigration, like crime. Those are things that, the solutions are really pretty quick fixes. But the longer term solution It's how you indoctrinate and educate your kids. And part
Yes.
of that is how you school them. And one of the things that's got to change is either A, the school system set, the public school system has to change. B, you got to use another system, another way of educating them. And I think both of those things have been moving in the right direction as a direct result of what the left has done over the last 20 years. And so at the end of the day, that's yet another positive. We see a
Yeah.
huge growth in homeschooling, a huge growth in private schooling, a huge reduction in people going to public school, and a huge protest movement for those who are still in the public school to make them change their behavior. All of those things have to happen. And they are happening.
Well, they are. They are. And so it's about staying in the fight and staying in the game to stay in the fight, right?
Yeah, it's a hey, we're in multi-generational warfare. This will continue long after we turn to dust, just like it started long before these kids were born.
Yeah.
We're 50 years into a battle, and we didn't even know we were in one. Um,
I know, right? I
yeah,
know.
you had to have the same mentality that the Roe v. Wade people had. Lots of people started that battle and didn't live to see the end of it. It's really not the end of it, but didn't live to see it get reversed. But
Yes.
their sacrifices, people like Phyllis Schlafly, who's been gone probably 10 or 15 years by now, but due to efforts from people like her, Roe v. Wade got reversed. And hopefully, 15 years after we're gone, people that are still around can look back and say, thanks to people like us, we've been able to get these schools fixed and get kids educated in Judeo-Christianity, the U.S. Constitution, and free market capitalism. That's our war.
It is. And I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Don.
I did not
Wonderful.
I haven't even had anything to drink yet.
Oh, hey, I've got it to tell you, your book, Dad's Rants, was, I bought a few copies and actually shared one yesterday. My husband actually did. I can't take the credit. I won't take the credit. My husband, he gave it. We have a plumber had to come to our house, and we know him. He's a great guy.
Mhm.
And Charlie goes, you know what? He's got 3 kids. They need this book. So
I love to hear those reports from people in terms of how it's helped them, right? Because it's really fun
yes,
hearing that. And I get that periodically. I get somebody who calls and say, "Yeah, it had a great impact." So that's really cool.
yes, it is. And everybody should go to Amazon. Is that where you can get it? I
Right,
think
correct.
so.
Uh-huh.
On Amazon.com, look up
Mhm.
Don Anderson and Dad's Rants.
Yeah.
You want to get it.
It'll pop up, and you and
It
you'll have
will
to,
pop up.
and
And
you'll laugh.
it's good. It's
Yeah,
good. So,
it's designed to make you laugh too. That's part of the whole thing, is right. It's learning should still be fun, right? And I
yes.
think it is fun. I had fun writing them, so
Well, I have fun reading it, and I pick it up and I still read some stuff, and I've read the book and I just go, I need a little more. But I'm like that. I like to, uh, just read a book more than once on good books. So is it on Kindle? So Pat Finley says he got it on Kindle.
yes, it is. Mhm.
Cool. That's cool. If you've got Kindle or
Mhm.
a digital copy, that's great. All
Yeah,
right, Don. You and I will be back next week,
yes,
right?
absolutely. I'll be there. Be square.
Okay. So we'll be back next week. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back on Friday with David, and have a great week. We've got this Arctic blast coming, and so I'll tell you, if you need to be careful with your plumbing and open, just be careful because it's going to get so cold. We're
Hey,
going to be in the single digits over here.
what you need is firewood, right? You need firewood, peppermint schnapps, hot chocolate, a good blanket, and a good spouse, and you're golden.
All right, there you go. There you go. Stay warm. And anyway, so everybody share the message, pass us around. We're kind of get throttled on Facebook a bit. Anyway, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Take care. Thank you.